Hi, and welcome to the SOU Career Clinic. My name is Max Brooks, and today we're going to be talking about resumes. Let's start with the question, what is your resume? Well, it's a lot of things. It's the first impression that you're going to make on an employer in many cases, and it's an answer to the questions, have you, can you, and will you do the job if you're hired? It's a sample of the great work that you're capable of producing. And most importantly, it's a targeted snapshot of the education, experience, and skills you have that are valuable to an employer. Now remember, what's valuable to one employer might not be valuable to the next employer. So it's not a static document that you can send out to everybody. Instead, it's a targeted snapshot that focuses on specifically what one employer wants. And then as you apply for another position, you focus on what that employer wants and change your resume as needed. Here's some things to keep in mind before you begin writing your resume. First, make sure you've done your research on the industry or the employer or the job. Do you know what's going on in that industry? Do you know what skills you're going to need to highlight? What can you glean from reading the position description? And how are you going to present yourself in a relevant way? Learn to speak the employer's language. What are the words and phrases that come up again and again in the position description? Have you incorporated those into your resume? Learn about the trends that are developing within the industry. Are there big things that are happening that you need to be aware of? Has the employer been in the news? Do you need to think about how to incorporate any of those things into your application materials as you write them? Identify the core skills required to do a particular job. Some of this will come from the position description. Some of it might come from informational interviews you've had, or maybe you've already worked in the field of it and know what folks are going to be looking for. Identify what those skills are and make sure they're reflected in your resume. Here are some things to make sure that you do when writing your resume. First, be specific and quantify whenever possible. Provide context, provide details, point to achievements and accomplishments to show off what you've done and are capable of doing. Proofread multiple times. Don't trust spell check. Read your resume word for word and then share it with other folks who are willing to do the same. You don't want to make a mistake. Be consistent with the formatting from section to section to make the resume appealing to the reader and easy to read. Organize the information in your resume in reverse chronological order. That means start with what you're doing now or have done most recently and work backwards from there. And pay close attention to verb tenses in your bullets. If you have done a job but are no longer doing it, you're going to be speaking in past tense. If you are still doing a job, then you can speak in present tense. And keep your resume to one page unless you absolutely need to go longer. You want relevant information in your resume. Most of the time, that means that you can keep it to a single page. And if you're going longer than a page, you might be speaking about things that are not relevant to that particular employer. Only use more than one page if everything on that resume is directly relevant to the job that you are applying for. And you know this already, but just a reminder, be truthful about your accomplishments without undervaluing your experiences. You never want to lie on your resume. You also want to make sure that you are tooting your own horn and showing off what you've accomplished. If you don't do it, no one else is there to do it for you. Here are some things you don't want to do on your resume. I would recommend not using a resume template from a word processing program like Microsoft Word. Once you use one of those programs, it can be challenging to edit your resume going forward. Maybe you want to take off a section or change the formatting just a little bit. That can be more challenging if you've used one of these formatting programs. If you build it from scratch, however, maybe looking at a sample that you like, then it's much easier to adjust going forward. Don't use phrases like responsible for or was in charge of. They feel overly generic. You want stronger, more detailed, action-oriented verbs to lead off your bullet points in your resume. Don't say what you were supposed to do. Instead, say what you actually did. Even better, what you actually accomplished in a particular role. Don't begin bullet points using I, and you don't need to write incomplete sentences. Your whole resume is about you. It's going to get redundant and repetitive if you start every bullet point saying, I did this or I did that. And don't include personal information, such as your social security number, your age, your birth date, your nation of origin, or a picture. None of those things are relevant to whether or not you can do a position. Don't list unrelated or minor duties, such as open mail or file documents, unless it's directly related to the position that you're applying for. Don't limit yourself by including only paid experiences. You can show off what your skills and experiences are through your internships, through your volunteer activities, through co-curricular activities like clubs or organizations, or sports or music or drama. So be sure that you're thinking not just about what you've been paid for, but much more broadly about all the different things that you've done when you're putting your resume together. And again, don't lie or exaggerate on your resume. Let's walk through some of the common sections that you're going to see on your resume, beginning with your header. On your header, you're going to include your name and your phone number and your email address. You might also include a mailing address, a LinkedIn page, social media handles if they're professionally relevant, a website if you have one, or a link to a portfolio if you've got that. When you're putting these materials together, make sure that your name stands out. Perhaps it's bigger or bolder than your other text. If you're including your phone number, as you should be, make sure that you call to yourself and listen to your voicemail message. Is your mailbox filled up? Have you named yourself in your message so that the employer knows that they're getting in touch with the right person? If you're listing an email address, is it a professionally appropriate address? If you're about to graduate, I'd recommend not using your school address anymore, but switching to your own personal address because you will lose that school address at some point after graduating. Here's an example of a header. You can see my name in bold, larger than the other text, so it really draws the eye. We see an address, we see an email address, and a phone number included as well. The next section you're likely to have is an education section. If you have extensive experience and if that experience is going to be more relevant than your education, then you might want to list experience next. But for most folks who are still in school, going from the header to the education is probably what makes most sense. Begin with your most recent educational experience and work backwards. Again, we're using reverse chronological order in your resume. Include the degree that you expect to earn, or if you've already graduated, the degree that you have earned, what your major is, and your minor and concentration if you have those, what school you went to, and when you expect to graduate or when you did graduate. In most cases, it's totally appropriate to leave off high school at this point, or even stints at other institutions like community colleges or schools that you transferred out of. If they are directly relevant to the position you're applying for, then you can consider listing them, but otherwise, they're probably superfluous. And then consider adding any other useful information related to your education, like relevant coursework, GPA, honors and awards, or study abroad experiences. Here's an example of what an education section might look like. In this case, we see the student is attending Southern Oregon University in Ashland. We can see the kind of degree they're getting, in this case, a bachelor's degree, and specifically a Bachelor of Science. We can see what they're studying, so in this case, it's healthcare administration, and when they expect to graduate, in this case, June 2020. We've also added information here to show a concentration, coursework that is relevant to the position, and then some superlatives in terms of GPA and Dean's List. In addition to the header and the education experience, every good resume is going to have an experience section. Include any employment, internships, significant campus leadership, offices, volunteer work, and so on and so forth. That might include things like theater, music, arts, or athletics. Be sure to include the title, the name of the organization, the location, and the dates for each position that you're listing. Emphasize the duties, skills, and accomplishments that are relevant to the position for which you are applying. Again, that means you're going to need to tailor your resume from application to application. Use phrases that begin with action verbs rather than complete sentences. And do not use pronouns in your job descriptions. That means, again, you don't need to start each bullet point with I or me. And don't restrict your resume to paid experience. As we discussed, this can be volunteer opportunities, internships, co-curricular activities, or other things are totally appropriate for your resume. And then separate this section into multiple sections, such as leadership experience, work experience, or related experience, if appropriate. So, for example, if I am interested in applying to be a coach, maybe I'll have an experience section that says specifically coaching experience, and I'll list the coaching internship that I had, the on-campus position that I had while in school working with the athletics department, and then the volunteer work that I did coaching with the YMCA each summer. Any other experience not directly related to coaching could go in a separate section called additional experience. Here's an example. We see customer service experience in this case. We see the position is a lead server at Standing Stone, the dates in which the applicant worked at that position, and then several bullet points describing relevant duties and accomplishments. Notice that the person doesn't have this job anymore, so everything is in past tense. And notice that we're leading with good, strong action verbs at the beginning of each bullet point. Led a team, created weekly schedules, established rapport, memorized evolving menu, addressed complaints, balanced work. Even if the reader is just skimming this page and doesn't read everything in detail, they still have a good sense of the duties and responsibilities and achievements of this particular applicant. Also notice that these bullet points are robust without being too wordy. Think about a what plus approach. What did you do plus something else? For example, what did you do plus what tools did you use to do it? What did you do plus what was the outcome? What did you do plus what skills were needed to get that thing done? Keeping that model in mind will help you write better, more robust bullet points. Finally, a lot of resumes will have a skills section. Use this section to list concrete, relevant, demonstratable skills, trainings, or certifications. Things like foreign languages, computer skills, and other relevant skills should be included here. However, broad transferable skills, what you might think of as soft skills, things like communication, creativity, problem solving, etc., are best described in the context of your experience and not separately in a skills section. So again, skills section skills should be things that you can demonstrate easily and prove that you have. And as always, think about listing things that are directly relevant to the position for which you're applying. When appropriate, list the level of fluency or proficiency with the skill that you're discussing. So for example, if we look at this skills section, we can see that this person is proficient in Spanish, as opposed to say conversant or fluent. And they are also listing computer skills. So we see that they have expertise in Microsoft Office Suite. They're proficient in LexisNexis, yet have only a basic understanding of Adobe InDesign. Finally, think about any additional things that you need to list or want to list on your resume that didn't fit into one of the other sections. Maybe there's nothing left, but if there are additional things you want to say, then you can add additional sections as needed. Examples might be an objective section, summary of qualifications, awards and honors, professional development or memberships, publications, or interests, or anything else that fits your particular experiences. Here's an example of what a finished resume might look like. Here we see that in this example, Rocky Rader's resume is 1 page long. It is well formatted. The information is included in discrete chunks of information that are easy for someone to skim over and digest as they read. We see bullet points with good verbs leading each bullet point. It passes the kind of 2-second test, meaning that when someone glances at it within a couple of seconds, it looks good. Even if they haven't read a single word, it looks professional and tidy and neat and easily approachable. Also, when they start reading, they're going to see great examples of the work that this particular applicant has done. So I hope that this has been helpful. There are, as always, lots more resources on the Career Connections page. If you visit sou.edu/careers and click on the Students and Alumni tab, you'll find more tools there, and you can always reach out for an appointment with the Office of Career Connections. Thanks so much and good luck with all your applications.